I still remember that moment. I completely broke down, not crying in a dramatic way, not screaming into a pillow, just sitting in a quiet apartment on a Saturday night, phone face up on the table, no notifications, no plans, no one checking in. And the worst part wasn't the loneliness. The worst part was how used to it I had become. You've been there. Maybe you're there right now. And somewhere along the way, someone told you that having few friends means something is wrong with you, that you're broken, too quiet, too intense, too much of something or not enough of something else. Society handed you a measuring stick, number of friends, number of invites, number of people who'd notice if you disappeared, and you've been failing that test your entire life. But here's what nobody ever told you. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why your solitude isn't a wound, it's a weapon, and how to finally stop bleeding from something that was never even a cut. Let's start with the truth most people can't handle. The world is obsessed with connection, networking, socializing. Your vibe attracts your tribe. It sounds beautiful. It looks beautiful on Instagram. But underneath all of that noise is a quiet, devastating assumption that a person without a crowd is a person without value. That assumption has destroyed more potential than any failure ever could. Think about it. Every person who ever changed the world, who wrote something that lasted centuries, built something that outlived them, saw something no one else could see, almost none of them were the most popular person in the room. Einstein was called socially inept. Nikola Tesla died almost completely alone. Kafka asked his best friend to burn everything he ever wrote. Van Gogh sold one painting in his lifetime. One. These weren't broken people. They were calibrated differently. And so are you. Here's the core concept, stripped to its bones. The human brain has a finite amount of social energy. Every interaction costs something. Small talk, maintaining appearances, managing other people's emotions, laughing at jokes you don't find funny, all of it draws from the same reservoir. Most people spread that energy thin across dozens of shallow connections and wonder why they feel empty. But you never had that luxury. You couldn't spread yourself thin because no one was asking for a piece of you. So instead, that energy turned inward. That's not a defect. That's called depth. Picture someone who grew up being picked last, not just in gym class, in every room they ever walked into. The last one invited, the first one forgotten. After years of that, you develop something that the popular kids never do. You develop an inner world so rich, so textured, so alive, that the outer world starts to feel like a faded photocopy of it. You start noticing things. The way a person's smile doesn't reach their eyes, the emotional undercurrent beneath a conversation no one else picks up on. The patterns in how people behave when they think no one important is watching. You become a reader of rooms, a student of human nature, not because you chose to study it, but because you were always on the outside, watching. And watchers see things that participants miss entirely. This is the first piece of the power you've been sitting on without knowing it. Perceptual depth, the ability to see beneath the surface of things. It's not a superpower in the comic book sense. It's quieter than that and far more dangerous, because perception drives decision-making. And the person who sees clearly in a world full of noise will always eventually move further than the person who's too busy performing to actually think. But there's a common mistake people with this gift make. A trap so seductive it looks like wisdom. They use their perception to protect themselves instead of to build something. Here's what that looks like in real life. You read a room perfectly. You see exactly who is trustworthy, who isn't, who's performing, who's genuine. And then you do nothing. You retreat. You take all that insight and you use it as evidence for why you should stay isolated. See, people are fake. See, it's not worth it. See, I was right to stay away. And you were right. You were completely, painfully right. But being right in a corner is still being in a corner. The wound underneath all of this isn't that you have no friends. The wound is that somewhere, some version of you stopped believing you were worth knowing. And every year you stayed quiet, every party you skipped, every conversation you ended early, you weren't protecting yourself. You were agreeing with the people who made you feel invisible in the first place. That's what this is really about. Not loneliness, not introversion, not social anxiety, though that might be part of it. It's about an agreement you made with your own smallness and how long you've been honoring it. The action I'm asking you to take isn't comfortable. It's not go make friends or put yourself out there. That advice is useless without this foundation. The action is this. Take one thing you've built in the silence, one idea, one skill, one perspective, one piece of writing, one conversation you've rehearsed in your head 1,000 times, and let it exist outside of you. Not for approval, not to be understood, just to exist. Because the power that grows in solitude only becomes real when it meets the world. And the world, as broken and shallow as it sometimes is, needs people who have spent years learning how to see. You've been treating your depth like a secret you're ashamed of, like something to hide, something to apologize for at dinner parties when someone asks why you're so quiet and you laugh nervously and say, I don't know, I'm just like that. As if like that is a diagnosis instead of a design. Let me show you what that depth actually looks like when someone stops hiding it. There's a specific kind of person. You've probably met one, maybe you've read about one, who changes careers in their 40s, walks away from everything they built, and starts over with nothing but an idea. Everyone around them says it's a breakdown, a crisis, a mistake. 5 years later, that person has built something real, something that matters. Something that the people who called it a breakdown couldn't have imagined because they never spent enough time alone to imagine anything at all. That's not luck. That's what happens when years of internal processing finally find a direction. The psychology behind this is straightforward, even if it's rarely talked about. Psychologists call it self-concept clarity, the degree to which you have a clear, stable, and consistent sense of who you are. Research consistently shows that people with high self-concept clarity make better decisions under pressure, recover faster from failure, and are less susceptible to peer influence. And who develops self-concept clarity? Not the people who've always had a crowd telling them who they are, the people who had to figure it out alone. You figured it out alone. That means you have something most people in therapy are desperately trying to build from scratch. Now, here's where it gets difficult. Because knowing this, really understanding it, requires you to grieve something at the same time. You can't fully own the power of your solitude without also feeling the sadness of what it cost you. The birthdays that were quiet, the weekends that stretched like empty hallways, the inside jokes you never had, the group photos you're not in, the sense of belonging you watched everyone else seem to feel so effortlessly. That grief is real. Don't skip it. Don't turn it into motivation too fast, because if you do, it just becomes fuel for the same wound, proving yourself to people who weren't paying attention to begin with. Feel it first, then let it become something else. Because here is the hard truth about people who are built for depth rather than breadth. Your relationships, when you finally have them, will be different, not more numerous, not louder, but they will carry a weight and a realness that most people only experience once or twice in their entire lives, if ever. You don't collect connections. You forge them. One person who knows you, actually knows you, is worth more than 100 people who know your name. And because you've spent years developing the capacity for depth, you know how to give that to someone. You know how to listen in a way that makes people feel seen. You know how to hold space because you've spent so long holding your own. That's not nothing. That's everything. The final thing I want to leave you with isn't a strategy. It isn't a framework. It's a reframe that, if you let it settle, will change the way you walk into every room for the rest of your life. You were never the person without something. You were the person who had too much sensitivity, too much awareness, too much inner noise, and the world didn't give you a container for it, so you carried it alone. And you built something in that silence that most people never build at all: yourself. The loneliness wasn't a punishment. It was a forge. And you've been sitting on the finished blade this whole time, wondering why you feel so heavy. You don't need the world to understand you. You need to understand yourself first. And if you're watching this, still here, still searching, you already do.